I moved into the apartment at the beginning of autumn. It was cheap, close to my work, and the landlord didn't ask too many questions. The building was old, with peeling paint on the walls and a faint smell of damp wood in the stairwell. I didn't mind. I just wanted a quiet place where I could be alone. The first few nights were uneventful. The heating worked, the windows shut tight, and I thought I had made the right choice. Then small things began to happen. At night, when I turned off the lights, I felt it. That heavy sensation, like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. I told myself it was just the stress of moving, but then I started hearing sounds, footsteps, slow, deliberate. They came from the wall that separated my apartment from the one next door. I assumed it was the neighbor. The only problem was, according to the landlord, that unit had been empty for months. I tried to ignore it. I put on headphones, listened to music, kept myself busy. But every night, just as I was about to fall asleep, the footsteps returned. Sometimes they stopped right by the wall beside my bed. A week later, I noticed something stranger. I was brushing my teeth in the small bathroom, staring at the cracked mirror above the sink. For a moment, I saw a shadow move behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. I laughed it off at first. Maybe it was just my reflection, distorted by the glass. But it happened again, and again. Each time the shadow seemed closer, darker, as if it was trying to step out of the reflection itself. One night, I woke up around 3 in the morning. The air was freezing, colder than it should have been. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing at the far side of the room. I couldn't move. My body was heavy, pinned to the mattress. Sleep paralysis, I thought. I had read about it online, but this felt too real. The figure shifted closer, its outline blacker than the darkness around it. Then it whispered, my name, quiet, broken, as if the sound came from inside my skull. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The next morning, I checked the wall by my bed. My breath caught in my throat. Faint marks covered the faded wallpaper. Handprints, smeared, stretching upward as if someone had pressed their palms against it during the night. I told myself maybe I had done it in my sleep, though I knew I hadn't. My hands didn't match the size of the prints. These were larger, longer, as if belonging to someone else entirely. Over the next days, things escalated. The noises grew louder. Knocks on the wall, scratches near the ceiling, the sound of breathing when the apartment was completely still. The mirror in the bathroom grew harder to look at. Sometimes I swore the reflection lingered half a second too long after I moved. I started leaving the lights on at night, but it didn't help. I could still feel it, the presence, watching me from corners where the shadows pooled deepest. Then came the night when the footsteps didn't stay behind the wall. They were inside, in the hallway, approaching my bedroom door. The sound of footsteps stopped right outside my room. The door was closed, but I could see the faint outline of the handle. It trembled just slightly, as if touched by an unseen hand. I held my breath. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to move, to run, but I stayed frozen in bed, staring. The handle didn't turn. Instead, the silence stretched until the only thing I could hear was the pounding of my heart. I forced myself up, flicked on the lamp, and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The floorboards didn't even creak. I told myself I imagined it, but when I looked down, the dust near the doorframe carried fresh marks. Bare footprints. I didn't sleep that night. The following evening, I invited my friend Aaron to stop by. I needed another set of eyes, some proof that I wasn't losing my mind. We sat in the living room drinking cheap coffee, and I explained everything. He laughed at first, but when the clock struck midnight, the laughter faded. From the wall came the sound, slow steps, one after another, moving steadily toward the bedroom. Aaron's face went pale. "You weren't lying," he whispered. He walked to the wall, knocked on it, then pressed his ear against the plaster. After a moment he stepped back, shaking his head. "Empty," he muttered. "There's nothing there." But the sounds continued, growing louder, circling us. Aaron left before dawn, promising to call the landlord about getting me out of the lease. I never heard from him again. His phone went straight to voicemail. 2 nights later, I saw it again. This time, not in the corner, not in the mirror, but sitting at the edge of my bed. A dark figure, still, hunched, its outline bending the air around it like heat rising from asphalt. I couldn't move. My chest locked, my throat closed, the figure leaned down, and again that broken voice spoke my name. It was not a whisper this time. It was a rasp, dragged out, full of hunger. I blinked, and it was gone. When morning came, I found new handprints on the wall. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens, overlapping, as if a crowd had pressed against it from the other side. Sleep became impossible. I kept every light on, but even then I felt its presence circling me. Sometimes I caught a shadow sliding along the wall when nothing blocked the light. Other times the mirror reflected a second figure standing just behind me. The final night came without warning. I woke again at 3 in the morning. The apartment was silent. No footsteps, no knocks, no whispers. For a moment I thought it was over. Then I turned my head. The figure was right there, inches from my face. No eyes, no mouth, just the shape of a head leaning close enough that I felt the chill radiating from it. I tried to scream, but my voice failed. My body locked again. It spoke, not a whisper, but a groan, like air forced through broken glass. My name, repeated over and over until the sound became unbearable. Something wet brushed against my ear. My vision blurred, spots of darkness spreading across the room. Then everything went silent. I woke at dawn, shaking. The figure was gone, but the wall beside my bed was different. The wallpaper had peeled away, exposing the wood beneath. Carved into it, deep and uneven, was a single word: my name. I moved out that morning, leaving everything behind. The landlord never asked why. Sometimes, though, late at night, when the lights are off and the world is quiet, I still hear it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. I never liked working the night shifts, but they paid better. The office was small, cold, and always too quiet after midnight. My name is Claire, and I worked at a private security company. Most of the time, my job was simple. Watch the feeds from a row of old monitors, make sure no one was trespassing, and write down every hour that the building was secure. That night started like any other. A cup of instant coffee sat beside me, lukewarm and bitter. The cameras showed the hallways of an old corporate building that had been vacant for months. I had checked the doors earlier. Everything was locked, nothing to worry about. Around 1:30 a.m., I leaned closer to one of the screens. In the dim light of the monitor, I saw movement, not a person. More like a stretch of darkness along the far wall of the hallway. A shadow. At first, I thought it was a trick of the cameras. The feeds were grainy and full of static. But then the shadow shifted. It stretched across the floor like spilled ink. I sat up straight. My first thought was that someone had broken in and was moving with a flashlight. But there was no body, no outline of a person. only the shadow itself, sliding against the wall as if it belonged to something invisible. I rubbed my eyes and stared again. The shadow stopped moving. Then, slowly, it tilted. It bent in a way that made no sense. It leaned forward, almost as if it was bowing. My hands were cold against the desk. I switched to another camera. Nothing. The next one, nothing. Then back to the first hallway. The shadow was closer. I whispered to myself, "What the hell?" The building had no windows in that hall. No chance of headlights casting something through the wall. The shadow wasn't supposed to exist. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch. Old cameras often produce strange artifacts. But when I reached for my coffee, I noticed something that froze me in place. On the monitor, the shadow moved its arm, if you could call it that. It was faint but clear enough. It was mimicking me. I had just raised my hand, and the dark figure had done the same. I pulled my hand back. On the screen, the shadow slowly lowered its arm. Every muscle in my body went tight. I switched to the control panel and restarted the feed. Static filled the screen for a few seconds, then the image returned. The hallway was empty, no shadow. I let out a shaky breath, sat back, and forced myself to laugh a little. "Sleep deprivation," I muttered. But I didn't feel tired. I felt watched. The minutes crawled by. I kept scanning the screens. At 2:15 a.m., the shadows returned. This time on 3 different monitors at once. Each hallway showed a faint, tall silhouette that leaned toward the lens. All of them turned their heads slowly, in sync, as if they were aware I was watching. I grabbed the desk phone and dialed the police. The ringtone buzzed once, twice, then cut into silence. No operator, no sound at all. I tried again, pressing the buttons harder. The line was dead. I pulled out my cell phone. No signal. My stomach twisted. The office always had reception. On the monitors, the shadows were no longer in the hallways. They were closer. One appeared in the stairwell, another in the lobby. And then I froze when I noticed the final camera. It was the one pointed at my own office door. The shadow was outside. The feed flickered. For a second, I thought the camera had failed. But then the door handle twitched. I didn't move. My hands gripped the desk so hard my nails dug into the wood. The shadow on the monitor bent its head, slowly, almost touching the lens. Even though it had no face, I felt it staring right through the screen into me. I reached behind me and hit the switch that cut power to the office lights. Darkness swallowed the room, but the monitors were still on. And inside the reflection of the glass, I saw something impossible. The shadows were no longer just on the screen. They were in the room with me. I pressed myself against the chair, trying not to breathe too loud. The monitors glowed faintly, the only source of light in the office. Their flicker painted the walls, and in those pale flashes I saw them. The shadows weren't flat anymore. They stood between the monitors and me, tall and crooked, like figures cut out of black paper. The outlines shifted as if smoke kept rolling inside them. One of them bent its head toward me. The shape of a face, but no features, no eyes, no mouth, just a void. I forced myself to reach for the desk phone again. My fingers shook so badly I dropped the receiver. The crash echoed in the room. On the monitors, every shadow tilted its head at the same angle, as if mocking me. I whispered, "Stay away." My voice cracked. The nearest figure moved, not walking but sliding across the floor, stretching longer as it approached. The temperature in the room dropped. My breath came out in pale clouds. I bolted from the chair and ran for the door. My hand wrapped around the handle, but it wouldn't turn. Stuck. I pulled harder, but the metal was like ice, burning my skin. Behind me, I heard the faint hum of the monitors changing. I turned my head just enough to see. The cameras no longer showed the hallways. Every screen showed my office from a dozen angles, all of them focusing on me. I stumbled back from the door, clutching my arm to my chest. My reflection filled the monitors, surrounded by shadows that grew closer with every second. I grabbed my cell phone again, even though I knew there was no signal. The screen flickered with static the moment I unlocked it. Then it went black. The shadows moved in a circle now, their faceless heads all pointing at me. The office felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in. One of them stepped forward, so close I could see the faint texture of static rippling over its surface, like it was made of broken signal. It raised its arm and touched the lens of the nearest camera. The monitor flared white, buzzing loud enough to make my ears ring. Then another shadow did the same on a different screen. One by one, they all leaned close, pressing into the glass. I covered my ears and screamed, but the sound vanished into the hum. The monitors grew brighter, brighter, until the light seared my eyes. And then, just like that, the office was silent. The screens were black, no glow, no static, no reflection, only the dark pressing against me from every side. The last thing I saw before the power cut out completely was the silhouette of a face, inches from the main camera. No features, only endless black. Then the screen died forever. I never believed silence could feel heavy until I moved into that house. The place was cheap, too cheap for its size, and as a broke student I didn't ask too many questions. It had a basement, but the landlord mentioned it only once in passing. Doors locked, nothing down there, he said. At the time I didn't care. I had classes, assignments, and a desperate need for affordable rent. The first few nights passed quietly. I studied late, ate instant noodles, and fell asleep to the hum of my laptop fan. Then, around the fourth night, I woke up at 2 a.m. The house was silent, except for something else. A faint rustling. Not in the walls, not outside. It was coming from the stairwell that led to the basement door. At first, I told myself it was the wind or maybe old wood shifting. But the sound was steady, like feet dragging slowly down steps. I got up, barefoot, and stood in the hallway. The basement door looked ordinary, painted white, chipped at the edges. But behind it, that faint shuffling continued, moving upward, then stopping. No one lived down there. The door was locked. My pulse hammered. I stood there until the sound faded, then went back to bed. The next day I tried to shake it off. Students at campus rented worse places, I told myself. I was lucky, but at night the sound returned. Rustling, dragging. Sometimes I thought I heard a whisper, too low to make out, but enough to raise every hair on my body. On the sixth night, I decided I needed proof. If I could catch something on camera, maybe I'd stop doubting myself. I set up my old camcorder facing the basement door, red recording light blinking. Then I forced myself to sleep. In the morning, I reviewed the footage. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Just static hum, faint creaks of the house. Then, around 2:17 a.m., the sound began. The shuffling again growing louder. But the door never opened. The camera, though, picked up something my eyes had never seen. A shadow moved, not across the floor, but across me. I was asleep on the couch in frame, and behind me, clear as daylight, a tall, thin silhouette stood. Just stood, motionless, as if watching. Then another appeared, then another. 3 figures, blurred in gray, hovering behind me like they were part of the air itself. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Because I remembered that night. I had been alone. I turned off the camera and shoved it back into my drawer, but I couldn't unsee it. All day I kept glancing over my shoulder. Every corner felt too dark. Every reflection in the window looked wrong. That night I swore I wouldn't look at the door. I shut my bedroom, pulled the covers over my head, and tried to block out everything. But the shuffling returned, louder. This time it reached the top of the stairs. I heard the knob rattle. I sat up, sweating. My phone flashlight shook in my hand as I pointed it toward the hallway. Nothing. Silence. Then, very softly, I heard breathing right outside my room. I didn't sleep at all. By morning, exhaustion dragged at me. I wanted to leave, but my money was gone, locked into rent. The landlord didn't answer my calls. Desperation pushed me into a decision I now regret more than anything. If the sounds were coming from the basement, I had to see what was inside. The door wasn't locked anymore. When I touched the knob that evening, it turned without resistance. The smell hit me first, damp and cold, like soil after heavy rain. The light switch didn't work. I shined my phone light down the stairs, expecting to see a short set of steps and a concrete floor. Instead, the light just kept going. The staircase looked endless. I should have closed the door right then, but I didn't. Something pulled me forward. My foot hit the first step. It creaked. The whispering began. Not words, just layers of voices, overlapping, too many at once. With every step down, the voices grew clearer, louder, pressing against my skull. I counted steps as I went. 15, 20, 30. My light should have hit the bottom, but it didn't. Just more stairs. I glanced back once. The door at the top was impossibly far away, like I had been walking for hours. The whispers grew sharp, insistent. Some hissed my name. Others laughed softly. My legs trembled, but I kept going. Something in me needed to know where it ended. When I finally reached the bottom, the air felt wrong, heavy, thick. My light hit the walls, and that's when I saw them. Thousands of eyes etched into the stone, blinking all at once. They weren't carved like art. They pulsed, wet, alive, glistening in the beam of my phone. Each eye turned toward me, following every breath, every twitch of my fingers. I froze, unable to blink. It felt like if I moved wrong, they would all move too. The whispers stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I stepped closer to the wall. The eyes widened, hundreds of pupils dilating in unison. Some blinked slowly, others darted from side to side. I swear I saw one shed a tear. My hand shook as I raised the phone higher, trying to understand what I was seeing. That was when the surface rippled. The wall was not solid stone. It shifted like skin. The eyes bulged and sank back again, as if something enormous pressed against it from behind. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the last step. The voices returned, now clear enough to understand. Dozens of them spoke at once, overlapping, impossible to separate. Stay, join, down here, you already belong. My chest tightened. My light flickered. The battery indicator showed half, but the beam dimmed anyway. A faint glow began to radiate from the walls themselves, each eye giving off a sick pale light. The basement was illuminated without shadows, leaving me nowhere to hide. I turned and bolted up the stairs, or tried to. The first step stretched under my foot like rubber. The staircase no longer felt solid. Each step I climbed seemed to pull me deeper instead of lifting me out. I ran, but the top door never got closer. The whispers laughed, mocking, taunting. My legs burned. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the air. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. My phone died in my hand, leaving me with nothing but the glow of those eyes from below. Finally, something changed. The voices stopped again. The silence dropped like a curtain, sudden and crushing. I looked back. The staircase was empty. The wall of eyes was gone. Instead, the basement stretched into darkness. Pure black, no floor, no walls, no ceiling, just an abyss. My stomach lurched as I realized I stood at the edge of nothing. If I took one more step, I would fall forever. My body shook. I pressed my hands against my ears, but in that silence I still felt the words in my head, not spoken, planted. You saw us. You cannot leave. We are already behind you. I spun around. The basement door was suddenly close, only a few steps away. Relief surged through me. I lunged upward, took the last step, and shoved the door closed behind me. For a moment, everything was normal. The hallway, the couch, my backpack still by the wall. I almost convinced myself I imagined it all, until I saw the camera. It was still recording, though I hadn't touched it. The red light blinked steadily. I reached to shut it off, but the screen caught my eye. It showed me standing there in the hallway, only I wasn't alone. Behind me, filling the frame, was a crowd. Dozens of figures, their bodies blurred like smoke, but their faces sharp, each one with too many eyes staring straight into the lens. Some hovered just inches from the back of my head. Others stood at the edge of the frame, waiting. My stomach dropped. I turned around. Nothing. Empty air. When I looked back at the screen, the figures were closer. Right against me. Their faces leaned in, brushing the back of my neck. I threw the camera to the ground. The plastic cracked. The blinking light died. But the house wasn't quiet anymore. From the basement door came the sound of steps, not slow this time, not dragging, fast. Dozens of feet pounding up the stairs all at once. I didn't wait. I ran out the front door and into the night, barefoot, leaving everything behind. I never went back. But sometimes, when I'm studying late at the library or lying awake in my new apartment, I hear it. The faint drag of feet on stairs that aren't there. The rustle in the corner of the room. And when I catch my reflection in glass, I don't always recognize the eyes staring back.